Hello, it's Deborah Richards from Madison's again. Thank you, Claire, and your fabulous team for letting me post again on my Tunbridge Wells. This week, I thought I would bring to you a bit of a roundup of the pros and cons, or the highs and the lows, or the learns of my build. So, as many of you will know, I am building a property just up off Warwick Park. Lovely location. We're nearing the end of it. I would say I'm on kind of like mile 23 of a marathon. So exhausted, fed up, wanting to get to the finish line like you wouldn't believe. But definitely the end is in sight. And I just thought it'd be really good to bring a bit of a sum up on the whole situation and what I've learned from it. So the first thing to do is context this really. I have always wanted to build my own house. I wasn't the kind of person who fell across a plot of land and thought, well, that would be a nice thing to do. I have passionately wanted to build my own house since the very, very first house I owned. And that was because I've always been one who bought a project. I've never bought a finished article. I've always wanted to create my own design of what I would like. Even though I appreciate the real joys of buying something that's already done, but that's just not been my thing. And I always found that after I'd done them, it was never quite right. There was always something that was still a little bit wrong. So the joys of building your own properties, of course, you would think in theory, you should be able to get anything you want done. But that's one of the learns I've found out. That's not the case. You are constrained by all sorts of things. The actual building, the structural engineer side of things, the plot, planning, neighbours, all sorts of things going on. So you can't necessarily, and budget, you can't necessarily have exactly what you want. But for me, I've always loved ultra modern architecture. So I love kind of real grand designs, these type properties. I appreciate the beauty and the charm of a more period property, but that's just not what makes my heart sing. So I love 1960s architecture and some of the really great architects of that time, those really modern, pushing the boundaries architecture. I love anything that's a bit weird, a bit quirky, a split level, a big picture window, a wooden ceiling. Love all of that. And that's one of the other things I've learned. You can have all of that. You can have an ultra modern grand design type build, but you have to throw an awful lot of structural engineering at it and money. Everything that you do in building a house boils down to those two things, really. Is it possible? Is it viable? Most things are, but if you want that big open plan void, whatever, you just chuck a lot more steel at it, a lot more engineering. And I now go past properties, instead of what I used to think, oh, that's nice, I'll put that on my list. I sort of think, oh, that would have been complicated and expensive and tricky. So that's another big thing that I've learned. I've also learned as well on that process that I have built in a modern building technique. So I have built in this stuff called ICF, insulated concrete formwork. It goes together like Lego blocks, polystyrene blocks, and you fill it with concrete. And it makes a really energy efficient, soundproofed, very strong structure. But when you move to anything that's a little bit unusual, your builders you have to go to have to specialise in that. And then every bit of the process after that is complicated. So putting my windows in, oh my gosh. I mean, normally you'd have a brick wall built, done. There's your window void. With ICF, it's all a lot more hit and miss. You have to waterproof it, otherwise the silicone from the window vanishes into the ICF and your windows start to rattle after 6 months. So everything is more complicated. Putting walls up, thinking about where you want to hang things, it's tricky. So you therefore end up spending, I feel, more money. Obviously what I've said before is you can get ultimately exactly what you want, but that has been a bit of a challenge for me. So one thing I've learned is I can have very clear in my mind what I want, but translating that through to a trade to implement is really, really tricky. So basically, I've got this vision in my mind. I know how I want it to look. So I have to say to them, right, well, I want you to do this, this, and this. And they might have in their mind this other detail that I've not covered, which is the normal way of doing things. And if you don't cover it, you'll end up with something that doesn't quite look like what you wanted. I've had quite a lot of that on my build. I'm not going to lie. It's so depressing when what you've had in your mind, then it arrives and it's not quite right. I don't want to mention in detail here where that's happened because I love my trades and I don't want them to feel bad about it. But there have been quite a few times when, when you go and look at a house and it's already built, it's like, okay, that's what I'm getting and I can see what I could do around it. When you're building from scratch, there is so much that's visualized in your mind that you've got to somehow translate through to your builders, and that can be really, really tricky. I think as well, that whole leap of faith, one of the biggest problems I've had with this build, it's got more and more growing, is every morning I wake up with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Now, I am not an anxious person by nature. I'm always lucky enough never to have suffered with any mental health issues around that. I'm very go-getter. If I think I can do something, I set my mind to it, I will do it, go for it. But with my build, every morning, that kind of sense of, oh my gosh, am I actually going to like it when it's done? Am I going to be able to afford to finish it? Am I going to bring it in on budget? How much is it going to actually reflect what we always wanted and visioned? Am I going to fall out of love of it during this process and not want to be there at the end? So enormous pressure and strain to create something that you hope you will like at the end of it. And the time aspect, that's something I would say to anybody thinking about a build. It's extreme. The time, the distraction, the energy you have to give it. I have a really, really busy day world. My job is huge. I work on average a 60, 70-hour week. I have 3 children. Juggling all that together is really tricky. Luckily, I have a very supportive husband who is with me on this journey, wants to get to this ultimate build. But it does put a huge strain on family relations and work because you are so distracted so much of the time. I go to site and it is like a time vortex. I will go there thinking, okay, quick 20 minutes, I'll whiz around, speak to all the trades, check they're all okay. I come out 2 hours later. It's like, how did that even happen? And a huge list of things to do and my head just whirring. So I'm really looking forward to moving in and not having all that stress, having the finances sorted, knowing that I hopefully like it. I can live with the stuff that hasn't quite gone exactly as I wanted, but ultimately I have built the home of my dreams in an area that I really, really love. Would I do it again? Right now, here, no, never, ever. Unless I was not working anymore, so retired, and maybe it was something completely different, like in another country or a little holiday home by the sea. We haven't got the money to do it, let me tell you, financially, my gosh, never. But, or maybe like a place in the French Alps. But would I do it again in terms of building a house locally? No, not here and now. Retiring and maybe having to downsize and thinking, I love my home, but I want it a lot smaller. And time, like childbirth, you forget how horrific it is, don't you? Otherwise, why would you do it again? Maybe that's what will happen. I'm birthing at the moment. I'm in my final stage of labour and someone's saying to me, would you do it again? No, never. Hopefully it will come out. The sleepless nights will ease. I will love it. And it will be okay. Thank you so much to everyone who's watched all my Instagram stories. I post just a really positive bit on Instagram each week. It's always like, la, but trust me, behind it, there's often a world of pain going on. So Instagram is never real, is it, to what's happening? But thank you for everyone who's watched and supported. And if anybody ever wants to have a chat with me when this horror show is over about if you're thinking of building, then I could live vicariously through you rather than doing it again. But yeah, keep watching. It'll be done soon. And anybody wants to have a chat about it, do get in touch.